Hi, this is Lynn from FromOurBookshelf.com, and today I wanted to give you two brief book reviews. This is kind of a book pairing or a fact versus fiction. It is the book Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate and Before and After, also by Lisa Wingate. This is a historical fiction novel on a children's home in Tennessee during the 1930s and 40s, and it is a story that follows a family and other orphans that were taken from their parents and put in an orphanage and then given up for adoption. And it's about kind of the scheme and the business they ended up, this woman and her group ended up basically selling children is what they did. And this is a fiction story based on the actual home. And shortly after this book came out, Before We Were Yours, a book called Before and After came out, and it is the true stories of the children who survived the children's home in Memphis, Tennessee. So this is the stories of, some of them are good and some of them are heartbreaking to hear the real life stories. And this follows some of the children that share their story of learning where they came from, that they had been in the orphanage, finding their roots. Many of them ended up finding their family and their parents that they were separated from. Others did not. And it's just they found their siblings. Some of them found their siblings that they had been in the home with. So many of the stories in here are heartbreaking. It is written totally different. I saw a book review for someone that absolutely loved Before We Were Yours, but did not like Before and After at all. And my experience was I liked them both. I thought this was a great book. It was one of my favorite books of the year a couple years ago when it came out. I absolutely loved it. I've recommended it. It is just great. I love Lisa Wingate's writing. I've read several books by her. I love her style. I think she writes great historical fiction books. But this is a totally different book. This is sharing the real life stories. It's not written like a historical fiction book. It's sharing their true stories in their lives. It's not even really narrative nonfiction. It's just sharing their stories. And I loved it. I love knowing the fact behind the fiction. If you like knowing the fact behind the fiction and haven't read either of these, highly recommended. If you have read Before We Were Yours and you like knowing the fact behind the books and the authors and the events, highly recommend Before and After. I think I'd recommend reading the fiction version first and then the nonfiction version. So read Before We Were Yours first and then read Before and After. I guess it really doesn't matter. I just think I'd prefer reading the fiction versus the fact. So highly recommend both of these books, Before We Were Yours and Before and After. Pick them up.